Okay, so we are going to start with the second tool that biologists use to record the history of life, which is the fossil record. So the fossil record provides direct evidence about what organisms from the past look like, where they lived, and when they existed. Okay. So the fossil record is a total collection of fossils that have been found throughout the world. Fossils usually form when part or all of the organism is buried in some type of sediment. So the many types include an intact fossil, compression, cast, permineralized, and trace. So if the species is a new is new, age is estimated based on the age of nearby rock layers. So here's some examples of the fossil types. Okay, so intact fossil, that could be like a mosquito trapped in amber. You have compression fossils, like you see this leaf here that was compressed by two layers of sediments. There's a cast fossil that's very common with organisms that have a hard shell. For mineralized fossils, this is when the fossils eventually it kind of just turns into a rock, like this petrified wood. And then there's trace fossils, which is an animal's footprint or organism's footprint. So fossils form only under certain conditions. So they must be buried quickly and they also must decompose slowly. And this makes it a rare event. So that's why it's very rare to find fossils. So, for example, there are 12 specimens of an ancient organism called the Archaeopteryx, which is the first bird-like dinosaur to appear in the fossil record. So, because there's only 12 specimens, that equals to one out of every 200 million individuals uh, were fossilized and discovered. So the fossil record has several limitations. So there's habitat bias. So the organisms that live where sediment is actively being deposited, so like bogs, swamps, beaches, are more likely to be fossilized. And in these areas, animals with certain behaviors like burrowing animals also are more likely to be fossilized than for example, flying animals. There's the taxonomic and tissue bias. So organisms with hard parts are more likely to leave a fossil evidence. Okay. There's the temporal bias. So recent fossils are more common than ancient fossils. And then there's an abundance bias, where organisms that are abundant, widespread, and present for a long time are more likely to leave fossil evidence. The best estimate is that the Earth is started to form about 4.6 billion years ago, and life on Earth began about 3.5 billion years ago. Earth history is divided into eons, eras, periods, and epochs, and radiometric dating is used to determine dates and events and species in the fossil record. Evolutionary firsts indicate the appearance of important new lineages or innovations, but these dates are likely to be underestimated because the species it can vary. So species can exist for a very long time before leaving any fossil records. So that's why they're always considered underestimates. And adaptive radiation is the rapid production of many descendant species from a single lineage. So from a common ancestor. These descendant species have a wide range of adaptive forms. These may be inferred by phylogenetic analysis or observed in the fossil record, as a sudden appearance of related diverse species. So an example of adaptive radiation would be the Hawaiian silver swords. So there's 30 species of Hawaiian silver swords that evolved from tarweed, and they meet all three of the hallmarks of adaptive radiation. They are a monophyletic group, so they have an ancestor and all the descendants. They speciated rapidly, and they diversified ecologically into many niches. So the term niche means a role that an animal can have in the ecosystem. Right? So it means like the resources that they can use and also the range of conditions that they can tolerate. So here's the phylogenetic tree for the silver sword. So they started with with a common ancestor, a tarweed, and that colonized the colonized the Hawaiian Islands. And so and it also had many forms. So there's like the mat, and also the rosette form. Okay, so that would be like an example of different niches that the plants have. So there are two general mechanisms that can trigger adaptive radiations. There's extrinsic factors like favorable conditions in the environment, and also intrinsic factors such as evolution of key morphological, physiological, or behavioral traits. Okay. Ecological opportunity is the availability of more or new types of resources. So this has driven a wide array of adaptive radiations. So for example, few other flowering plants were on the Hawaiian Islands 5 million years ago. So the silver swords were able to diversify into many vacant niches. The evolution of a key trait may have triggered many important diversification events in the history of life. So for example, flowers help trigger diversification of angiosperms into the most species-rich lineage of land plants. And also feathers and wings gave some dinosaurs the ability to fly. So today's bird lineage contains about 10,000 species. All right, so I think this is a good point to um, finish the chapter. So this is going to be all that we're going to cover for chapter 25.